Hello viewers, you're welcome to Let's Talk About. Now Let's Talk About is our Wednesday program, online program where we seek to understand the real social issues that confront our nation, that confront the world at large, our personal lives. And today we're going to be discussing a very critical aspect of our lives. Now, do you know that each year the country spends in excess of $290 million in taking care of sanitation issues in this country? And please pardon me with this statistic. Do you know that in excess of 17% of people in this country still engage in open defecation? We're spending in excess of $90 million to take care of some of these menaces we find in our country. And we're speaking of this as of 2024. There are a lot of housing problems. All of us are in Accra. Sometimes we get to see the problems that come up when there are rains, flooding everywhere. Our drains are always choked. And so today we're going to be discussing issues concerning sanitation and health in Ghana. My name is Kweku Atakrajumo, and I'll be your host today. And I've been joined by an expert, somebody who is well known in the industry of sanitation, health, housing, in fact, literally everything about the housing, sanitation, health space. She's well known. Dr. Date, you're welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Now, Dr. Date is going to explain to us, in the first place, what is sanitation, going to help us understand the consequences of not practicing good hygiene, the consequences of not maintaining a good sanitation in our country, and probably get to see what we can do as a people to help solve our sanitation issues so that we don't spend so much of our GDP, sometimes in excess of 2% of our GDP, only solving problems of sanitation in the country, which is just recurring. So, Dr. Date, I'll give you the floor to explain to our viewers what sanitation is and to tell us what we need to know, everything we need to know about sanitation.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know if I could tell you everything we need to know. I'll say what I know. I'm sure our viewers and our listeners would also have a lot of ideas and opinions. But it's a topic I'm passionate about, so thank you for having me. I think I would start with first what sanitation is. If most of us are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we've heard about SDG 6, which is on water and sanitation, and we've heard about SDG 6.2. So permit me to read a bit of the targets. So SDG 6.2, sanitation and hygiene, says that by 2030, we hope, globally, we hope to achieve access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all, and end open defecation, paying special attention to the needs of women and girls. So the question will then be, what is this sanitation that we are talking about? So in the context of SDG 6.2, we are talking about the safe management of human waste, feces, and the practice of proper hygiene. And most of these actions are predicated on having access to safe water. So I'll end in this general definition. But I know in Ghana, when people talk about sanitation, the first thing that comes to our mind is boiler. But we'll start first with our SDG 6.2. And as we move along, we'll come to the boiler bit, which we are all more used to. And so for what we would say, you rightly said, 17% nationally are still practicing open defecation. So it means if you take a room of 5 people, one of us will get up every morning and go and squat in the open. Another 3 out of these 5 would have to go and queue for a public toilet. And we know the attendance issues with those type of limited access to sanitation, especially if you have a running stomach. You can imagine what happens to you. Or if you are well dressed and you are going somewhere and you get into a public toilet and you come out, you see the scent. You get a new perfume
Right.
when you come out. And just about 20% we would say are using good facilities. So that's the bit about sanitation, referring to the management of human excreta and the access level at the household level. But I must say, even though we still have about 17% people practicing open defecation. Over the years, we've seen a gradual increase in access, that's overall access to household sanitation, which is very good for us as a country, because it is linked. So now I don't know whether I can already jump into the diseases.
You can.
Okay, sure. So it's linked to a lot of health issues. So if you look back at, let's say 2014, there was an outbreak of cholera in the country, and almost Greater Accra had so many cases. Sorry we couldn't show the picture, but you would have seen the map to show the density of people that have challenges with sanitation. More than 20,000 cases were recorded. There were a few deaths, and this is mainly because of the challenge of sanitation. I'm not a medical doctor, even though I'm called doctor. I come from the engineering side. But for you to get cholera, it means some way, somehow, you'd have ingested something called vibrio cholera or something that causes cholera, but it would have come from fecal-oral contamination. So that is why it's one of the very important reasons we have to deal with sanitation, health issues. So we also talk about intestinal worms.
But in fact, doctor, let me just come in. I'm very concerned about the sanitation, especially for our health.
Yes.
Going back to this issue of this fecal matter we engage in daily, especially as you confirm that we have in excess of 17% of people still using, engaging in open defecation. I'm aware of the fact that in Ghana currently, it is unlawful to have a house without having a toilet facility. So why do we still have this situation? Why should this still be? I mean, I know this law has been in force in excess of, if my math is right, about almost 20 years now.
Maybe forever.
Maybe forever. Exactly. Yes. Why do we still have this problem now, 2024?
Well, so maybe when we come to the bit about the solutions, we would look a little bit about why we are like that. Though there's a book I read many years ago, the book by Maggie Black. It's called The Last Taboo. More than 100 years ago, when the white man came to Africa and to a place called Kumasi in particular, they found that virtually every house had a toilet. You'll be surprised, yes. And they had what we might call the box thing.
Okay. You know,
they had a bit of a space, and then houses had a bucket or a pan there.
And this was long ago?
Long ago, more than 100 years ago. Even at that time, I'm sure people in Europe were still using things like that. And some people had dugout pits. So the concept of sanitation is not something that we ourselves as people don't know. But I think the evolution to present day, in 2010, something like pan latrines were banned. And so immediately people would not have access to that type of level of
But even that, I'm aware in some places, they still have access, they still do the one that were banned, the AMA was taxed to. I know some people still make use of it.
Well, now they've really pushed it very low, because in the last census it was less than 0.03%. So there's been very good progress. But the point I wanted to make is that the idea of sanitation or cleanliness is known to our people many years ago. But as we get into the cities, the type of housing we have, the type of spaces that exist, make people choose having extra rooms over having, let's say, toilet facilities. And so somebody is more interested in having more rooms as a landlord than making sure that there's a toilet there. People also become used to using the public latrine. But the challenge sometimes with the household facility is how you manage it, because we don't have sewage systems here. And so you have to have a pit, something that after some time you have to manage. So sometimes it becomes a challenge. But I think why we still have the problem, we'll come back to the issue of enforcement a bit later. But you would have to have enforcement of the bylaws and the rules that we have. The housing, you said 20 years, it's more than 20 years. I mean, our building regulations require that you should have a toilet in your house. And the building regulations have been there long ago. So the question is, how do we enforce? But as we know, it's a characteristic of the kind of housing systems we have. If you go to the well-developed areas in Ghana or Accra, you don't see people without toilets. It happens more in the densely populated areas where space is a problem, where access to water. You know, I mentioned that these are the hygiene and sanitation is predicated on having good access to water. So I think when you go to areas that they don't have good access to water, they don't have enough space, and often where the people don't own the house and so they don't make decisions about what is built, then you would often have the challenge of people not having toilets in their homes. But maybe we should come back to the health. Exactly, we should come back to the health. WHO came up with some guidelines for sanitation and health. And if you allow me to read one or two of the things that are there, you have the direct impact of poor sanitation to health. And so we are talking of this toilet issue still. And so as we've already talked about cholera, we also have diarrhea, you have dysentery, you have typhoid, and you even have poliomyelitis, which used to be a childhood killer disease, but we've made good progress in Ghana and dealt with it. You also have the worms, like ascaris or roundworms, helminth infections, so hookworm and other types of worms. You also have the schistosomiasis.
I think you have to come to our level. So we can use to understand the technical. I'm sure some of them are things we know, but we just don't know that these are their technical names.
They are technical names, yes. Yeah, things like bilharzia and all those kind of things. And then foodborne diseases. But you also have a vector bread. So you have water-based and then waterborne. So water-based is the ones that people will always say, oh, malaria, because insects, which are the vectors, are based in the water. So you have the water-based. Waterborne is when, you take it in and it goes through your mouth, and so you have the fecal-oral.
So you learn something new. When it's water-based, means that we are not taking the water directly. The vectors come from the water to our homes.
Yes.
Or when it's waterborne, we go to the water. What we take in.
No, waterborne is what we are drinking.
We are drinking. Yes. When we go to the water we take in, that's what brings the disease.
The waterborne.
But water-based, the vectors live there.
Yes.
And they move to our homes.
Sometimes you can also get into the water and get it. Like if it was maybe guinea worm or something, maybe you would get into the water and then it will. But I also want to say water washed is also the water washed.
Water washed.
Yes, where if you don't have enough water facilities to practice good hygiene, then you could get trachoma. I think it's a disease of the eye, and so you don't have enough water to be washing your face well. You could get certain disease, or if you don't have enough water. Does it mean
that if we don't take our bath properly, the kind of diseases we may get, those are water-washed problems?
Yes, I would suppose so.
Most people in secondary schools who don't take their bath, the kind of, their skins would have had, some of them come from school just one term and all kinds of things on their body.
Yes. So there are a lot of those things. And there's also lymphatic filariasis, which you would commonly term. I don't know, I hope I'm right, but elephantiasis or something.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's the lymphatic disease that will cause
swelling
the legs
of your legs.
Big.
Yes. So there are a number of diseases. So these are the direct ones.
Okay.
But indirectly, I tell you what, a young child, you get worms all the time. When you eat, what happens? You tell me. You are always getting worms. You are always getting diarrhea. What happens to you as a young child?
I mean, it will effectively on your body.
Exactly.
Even your learning.
Exactly. So indirectly, as a sequence of having various diseases, then you get stunting. You don't grow well. You get malnourished. You even get problems with your stomach. But you are right. You get cognitive impairment because you are not growing well. You are not eating well. You are consistently getting sick. But another thing I also want to add is also the pneumonia, which is related to repeated diarrhea, and then anemia, anemia.
But please help me understand. In my lame mind, I thought that pneumonia, usually we are told,
pneumonia
comes from when you're exposed to too much air.
Exactly.
Because growing up, they'll say every time you put on your shirt because you get pneumonia.
Exactly. But as I said, this one is not a direct infection. This is indirect because you are undernourished. Your body is not, well built to withstand the infections that are coming. So that's when you get these other sequential diseases. And then you also have to deal with anemia, which is low blood levels. And then the third one the third level. So there are 3 levels. We are talking of the direct, the consequential, but you're also talking of the general well-being. I tell you what, young ladies need to go to school. And this, I'm referring to issues of around menstrual health hygiene, which is part of the broader sanitation conversation. People, if they don't get toilet facilities in school, they can't go to school at certain times of the month. So it's also linked to how many times people go to school. And even young boys anyway would say, oh, teacher, I have to go to the loo. And then the loo is not in the school, especially when you go to the villages. It's somewhere, exactly, in the bush.
Yeah.
So these also affect school-going children. But it also brings a lot of what you'd call anxiety, shame. Because I remember one day we had to do some rounds in one of the communities, and we were standing by a public toilet. We wanted to take some pictures. It was a very beautifully dressed lady, and we didn't know she wanted to come in. We thought she was passing, and we were also just busy taking our pictures. And then she was still standing there. So something said, oh, just ask. And I realized she wanted to come and use the lady. So sorry, exactly, but she doesn't want to come. So we said, okay, look, we'll move soon so that you could go in. But what, this kind of shame, this kind of anxiety. In the morning, you're going, everybody sees, oh, he's going. Well, if you don't have it in your house and you go towards the beach,
you see a queue.
Yes.
So you see, and I've been always wondering. So the one with a running stomach, what do you do?
You have to beg. You have to beg. Yeah. And sometimes in the evenings, in some of the villages, in the evenings, if you're a woman and you have to go out and hide in the bush, you never know who will be waiting to attack you in the bush and do something. So it could also lead to gender-based violence or sexual assault. So that's why I'm saying that there's the direct, the indirect health, but there's also the, health is not just about the disease, it's also about your general well-being. So there's also these attendance things that come with poor sanitation, and that is why it's a very important topic.
No, it is good. From the exposition, we are seeing that, hitherto you'd have thought of it as just a problem that affects the normal bilharzias and Guinea.
Absolutely.
But then you are even exposing to the extent that now even your mind,
exactly.
Your performance in school.
Exactly. And when we talk of cholera, I tell you what, I when I was preparing to come here, I remember I read a document long time ago, so I said, let me check if the statistics still make sense. And it does, because I tell you what, diarrheal diseases is the leading killer of children under 5. That's recent data. Yes, leading killer of children under 5. And in Ghana alone, it's responsible for, as at the 2021 data that I had, it's responsible for at least 6% of death of children under 5.
Wow.
Yes, there was a time that there were even about 14,000 people dying, young people dying.
In this country?
Yes, but it's come down. our health has improved. We've improved sanitation, and it's come down. But still, a significant number of people die from diarrhea-related diseases.
It is, and so it's something that we can easily prevent.
Yes, we can. We can prevent it. And I tell you a story. Some time back, I read another survey that was done that said that the ability to treat waste as in like separate human feces from water, or sewers, this is a report that was done in the UK by a chief medical officer. He said that he could say boldly that being able to treat the waste or the sewer, or that's protecting ourselves from this sanitation related things, is can be said to be one of the greatest public health triumphs. Because they have the sewer, they have things that carry their thing away, so you don't get in touch with the waste. But he said it's one of the greatest public health triumphs, and it is even comparable to the discovery of vaccination and other things. So it comes to the issue of prevention is better than cure. But I think that it makes us see that this is a very, very important area to deal with. So we'll come back to the sewer later, but I just wanted to say that another study that was done, this a long time back, but if you've been reading the Human Development Reports, there was a time that they saw in Brazil, in one of the, I don't know what you call those things, you call them, I'll find the name, but those, they are low-income communities. It starts with an F. I'll find the name for you before we go. But they did a study in there, and they realized that where you have a house with a toilet, the rate of diarrheal diseases in children immediately decreases from 7 to about 3. Immediately the house gets a toilet. And even if you have toilet and drains and sewers combined, it even further comes down to just around 1. So you can see that there's a direct impact of dealing with sanitation issues right on the health of the society, especially young and vulnerable people. So this is very important to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Are you adding something to before? Because I'll come to us looking at why in 2024 we should still be having this conversation. Why should we, in an age where we should be thinking about artificial intelligence, thinking about modernized technology, why should we still be thinking about a house without a toilet? As you say, at night, somebody is thinking of going to a bush when the person, so it means that you can't even eat the food of your choice because you think about your stomach, think of what can happen to you at night. And I mean, we've not even discussed the reality of some people putting a rubber, throwing it in somebody's house. You wake up in the morning, have a gift in your home.
Exactly.
Why should we in 2024 still be having this conversation?
Well, it shocks me that 2024 we are still having this conversation. But I think it comes back to the complexity of human behavior. Because if you follow what is called the theory of reasoned action or the theory of planned behavior, there are a number of things that would determine how we behave or why we do certain things. And I think there are a lot of underlying human factors that make us still have to have this conversation. But before we continue, back in the Bible, this is what God said to the people in Deuteronomy 23, 12 to 14. I brought in a Bible verse because I thought you were a church, a church program anyway, but still.
Feel very free.
It said in Deuteronomy 23, 12, if I could read, it said to designate a place outside the camp where you can go and relieve yourself. And so they were talking about when they go for a war. And as part of your equipment, have something to dig with. And when you relieve yourself, dig a hole and cover up your excrements. For the Lord your God moves around in your camp to protect you and deliver your enemies to you. Your camp must be holy, so that he will not see among you any indecent thing and turn away from you. So this passage even is highlighting the importance of sanitation and cleanliness as part of living a holy life in the presence of God. And this is how many years ago. So it's something that even God at the very beginning, when he was giving various laws, and it's not just this law, there are other laws that he gave to the people about cleanliness, how to clean yourself, about sanitation. And so you ask yourself that we've known this all this while, and even more than 3,000 years ago,
more than that, yes.
Romans, the people in Carthage, the Greeks, even our own forefathers, I mentioned the example of Kumasi, we've known that we have to keep ourselves clean. But why? Why? And that is why I said the underlying human factors are a lot.
Yes, but I mean, I'm glad you bring in the biblical dimension, because I was going to ask you that, do you think that today is because the church or Christianity, we have gone low on some of these values? Because probably about 200 years ago, in the traditional Ghana, or let me say 300 years ago, when we didn't have some of these religious practices, when our forefathers still practiced the traditional religions, some of these health, these sanitation measures were tied to whether superstition, myth, or even to their gods.
Exactly.
That they'll let you know that in these areas you can't do this.
Exactly.
Some place they'll let you know when you drop this down, maybe you may see a dwarf or something.
Exactly.
And that kept them in check. Do you think that Christianity or now the church even contributes to some of these problems? Because I was shocked. I did some work sometime in a village. Now say it's a village, a township. And I was shocked at the serenity, the air there is different. Because I know it's heavily a traditional area. I barely saw rubbish on the ground, refuse anywhere. You see a designated place for refuse. Everybody was neat. Do you think that, I mean, some way, somehow, the church or religion also would have to blame it slightly for some of these challenges we have?
I wouldn't blame religion, but before we come to religion, I want to give the differences we see. Because if you go to the villages, they are more of a homogeneous society. They are a bit more homogeneous. Even if they have people mixing, they still have the traditional authority, and there's some kind of respect for the local chief, there's respect for the local elders. And so you'd see a lot more homogeneity in our response to a certain kind of authority. And so when you are told, don't do this, it's more likely that people will not do it, especially when they are afraid they might be banished. Being banished is not supposed to happen now, but we know sometimes in some places it happens. Exactly. Yeah. So they are afraid of the social consequences. But in Accra, seriously, who are you going to tell to behave? The person is doing it behind your house. Yeah. You tell the person, stop it. It's like, hire wasasi. So there's no respect for, there's no, authority. And so people would often do what they like. But it also an issue of social norms. Social norms. So for example, if you sat in a bus and you're traveling from here to Kumasi or to Tamale, you may get to a point where you really need to wee-wee. What will happen to you? I remember those times when you didn't have these rest stops. And even after the rest stop, you can imagine beyond.
Sometimes a distance, yeah.
The driver will just stop, and the women will put their cloth around them and find a place to wee-wee. And the men will be standing there. Everybody's wee-wee. Yeah. Will a policeman stop you and ask you, why are you wee-weeing in the bush? But in UK, if you try that, and I remember seeing it on police enforcers, they will tell you, why are you urinating here? You don't have a toilet in your home. You don't have a toilet where you're going. Why are you urinating here? It's something that you'll be penalized for doing. So the social norm, what is our social norm teaching us? I feel Ghanaians are clean people. They wake up every morning. The first thing, what is the first thing they do? Most people will sweep. So why is it that somebody who is sweeping in the bigger society would want to behave in the... There's something called not in my backyard. NIMBY. Once he cleans his house and his house is clean, he doesn't care what happens in his neighbor's place. So he will sweep out of his place and dump somewhere. And that is where the question you ask yourself comes. If we are predominantly Christians, according to the statistics, if we are predominantly Muslims, or we are predominantly believers of a certain deity, then the question is, why do we behave that way? Do unto others what you want others to do unto you. So essentially, you see that it's a question of, it's not that religion is making us bad. The question is, are we doing what we say we are, practicing what we preach? So that bit of it, I feel the social norms are maybe not helping us, but also we are also not taking responsibility to do the right thing. But we'll come to a lot more of the technical things. But they are bits and pieces, but they are all intertwined. Yeah.
And in fact, I like the social norm bit you bring up. Yeah. Because some of the areas, some of the unmentioned areas, some of the traditional areas, when you go and they say it's a cleaning day, you see all the young men and women in the gutters bringing out the filth. Where do they put it? They just put it just by the filth. Yeah. We are happy, we have cleaned the gutters. Yeah. In 2-3 days, everything goes back into the gutter. Yes. 2 months later, they call us, we are desilting the gutters. Exactly. They bring it up, put it just by the side.
Exactly.
And I think that, and for some of them, coming back to social norm, for them it feels like when you bring it out of the gutter and put it by the side, problem is solved.
Exactly, and I agree with you. In fact, I don't know, I wish we could see my slide, but my last 2 slides, I did like a Google search. Okay. And I said, how many times have we done cleanups in Ghana? You see, when the moment you write cleanup, you see how many hits you are getting. More than 1 million hits, in a few seconds. So the question you ask yourself is, yes, we should have the cleaning days, but essential question is that the most appropriate source? Because you bath every day, you brush your teeth every day, you sweep your house every day, you clean up every day. So in the bigger environment, should we wait till 1 year? Should we wait till 6 months? There should be consistent cleaning, and that is called public cleansing. And that is where maybe the environmental units of the assemblies come in. Because if we give out...
What comes there when we start talking about it. But I'm really enjoying this conversation. But let me remind my viewers that we are streaming live on all our social media platforms. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. Please don't forget to send us your comments, your questions. Or you can also send us a WhatsApp message on 050-157-9996. 050-157-9996. Send us your question, your contribution. Please do also to share the link with others. I mean, Doctor has given us some very good insights, but we'll just take a very short break. We'll come back and continue.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About. We've been having a very interesting discussion with Dr. Bertha Date, who is an engineering consultant, a sanitation engineering consultant. She has been giving us a lot of insights into our sanitation situation we have in the country. And before we left, I just liked the part where she mentioned that one of our biggest problems on sanitation are our own social norms. Some of the problems we have, they are inherent. That even when we do what is wrong, sometimes in our own eyes we think it is right. And thank you very much for staying with us. Doctor, we'll take off from where we ended. Now, beyond what we've discussed, is that all to environmental sanitation? Is it broader? Are there other things about sanitation that we probably do not vet our minds to that you'd want to let us know?
Yeah. So I think the fundamental sanitation is what we've covered. But here in Ghana, I think we talk of a broader environmental sanitation scope, which then brings in, beyond the household toilets we've discussed, it brings in the solid waste, cleaning drainage, cleaning of thoroughfares, food hygiene and other hygiene, managing stray animals, vector control, and environmental sanitation, education, and enforcement. So these are the broader areas that you'd be talking about when you talk of the broader environmental sanitation. I think whenever we say sanitation in Ghana, people see the bola. They always talk about clear the bola. And so sometimes you ask yourself, when you clear it, where will it go to?
But if I don't, let me ask you, it's been on my mind. Bola, is it, what word is it? Was it some word that was, we probably just corrupted it into bola? I've always been wondering what it means. Is this something that has come within your scope of sanitation engineering to know? Or is just a word we just came up with it?
This one, I have to go and do research and send you feedback later.
But
I would just say solid waste management. That's usually how I refer to it, solid waste management. But I'll find out since you've asked me.
Thank you very much.
And tell you the etymology of bola.
I'll be very glad, and I'm going to make noise about it. Mainly I get to know.
Let's hope we find it.
All right, yes. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Yes. So I think we were talking about the social behavior, because I wanted to link it to enforcement. Enforcement, since as I said this was a Christian program, I read something in Titus. I'm not sure if it's Titus chapter 1, but you could help me to check, which talks about the law. And it says the law was made for, is it the people who are, is it recalcitrant? The law is not for the people who are good, it's for the people who are recalcitrant. So when you make laws, and 80% or 90% of your people are falling foul of that law, what does it tell you? And so that is why maybe we can start already talking about some solutions. That is why, because I'm an engineer, I would always talk about engineering. But let me not start with it. I'll come back. Let's talk of the 3 E's: engineering, education enforcement. Since you have a bit of legal background, maybe you can educate me more. There's nothing like ignorance of the law once it's done. But if 80 or 90% of your people are falling foul of that law, then you really need to think about it and ask yourself, why is this happening? And so you need to rethink and reshape social norms. And so in rethinking and reshaping social norms, you ask yourself that what can we do to encourage good behavior? So you say to somebody, don't squat and have, don't poo-poo outside. But if he doesn't have a toilet in the house, what can he do? So you have to find alternative. The alternative is a public toilet, which smells very bad. And so it may be safer for him to go outside than to go into the public toilet. So if we want to make sure people are not practicing certain bad behaviors, that is where your engineering then comes in. How do you engineer solutions that would incentivize or, help people to behave well? You say to people, wash your hands with soap and water. Maybe soap is easy to find, but you don't have running water. So what do you do? And so you see that some of the norms we want to have, we need to have a certain infrastructure in place that help us to behave. You say to people, don't litter. How many bus stops, trotro bus stops or trotro stations, how many bins will you see there? So if I buy Gobewa Sana whilst I'm waiting in a queue, after I finish drinking Asana, what you are saying is put it in your pocket, put it in your bag, and take it home.
How do you
maybe
put
I
your
forget.
in your bag?
Okay, maybe Asana or even Fan Milk or Fan Ice.
No, I'm just even emphasizing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not keeping in your bag.
You put it in your bag, you may forget. And then 3 days later, you can imagine what scent you have in you. So if there's a litter bin, and then we encourage people to be dropping things in the litter bin, it becomes part of the behavior. If the litter bin is full, do people pick it up? Because we complain, you talked about the flooding. They say, oh, somebody is waiting. When it rains, then he carries his bola and comes to... But why has he waited to pilot? Why is somebody not coming to collect that bola? So there are sometimes you sign up to these sanitation companies, 1 month they've not come for your bola. So what do you do? If you want to be a good citizen, you give to bola taxi because you don't want to put it in the open. You give to Aboboya. Aboboya too, he doesn't know where he's taking it. He passes through some bush and then he dumps it there.
Maybe sometimes Aboboyas, the challenge is that they are filled. In fact, it spills over.
Exactly.
So you see them on the roads and it's just dropping.
Exactly.
Just dropping.
Exactly.
Definitely fall into a gutter somewhere.
So there's a whole chain that is not allowing us to behave well. And so we sometimes need to get the right structures in place that make us behave well, so that when the structure is in place, you educate people, you create awareness and say, these are the things you need to do. Then when they are not doing it, at least I know that if you say to people, please do, or, do this, at least if nothing at all, maybe a certain 20% will start doing what is right. After some time, a certain number of people will join, and then later the rest will follow. But if the rest or the last 10 who don't want to follow, they are recalcitrant. So you can then do what? You can bring in your enforcement and you can penalize them and punish them for not doing right.
But still on this engineering, now let me just find out. I mean, you're proposing a very good solution. I know it's been done elsewhere, in some of our European countries. But let me ask that, what have they done differently that we are also that we can copy or we can learn in terms of, you speak of putting bins at the bus stops. Today, some of the bus when you get there, you see that there's actually an opening for a bin, but there's no bin there.
Yes, people steal the bins.
People steal the bins. Getting the refuse. I mean, now, previously, there were these bin cars would come. Now, everybody would prefer the aboboyas, as you say. As we speak, I don't know where they take it to. I'm told sometimes they ride it somewhere, which I don't think that aboboya can travel that distance.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
What are our brothers and sisters in Europe and America doing that we can learn, whether from the governmental level or at our personal level?
Well, sometimes I don't want us to look too far, because we've done well before, and so sometimes it's about maintaining, what you do well. maybe let me start from the very end. In Teshi, maybe in the 70s or maybe some many years back, I don't know if you ever heard of Teshi fertilizer. Did you ever hear of any place?
I'm not sure I've heard of that.
Well, I think there was a composting plant there a long time ago where the idea was that you could get some manure out of the organic fraction, because if you take our solid waste, maybe more than 60% is organic, which means you can decompose it and it becomes compost, and you can use that as a conditioner for the soil. And so many years ago, Ghana had that. Many
and you still have it there now?
Oh no, it's gone. Now there's I think there's a trans. So what would usually happen is that when there's a boiler site, you're supposed to have a buffer according to the landfill guidelines. You're supposed to have a buffer, but with time, people will go and encroach on the space, get there, and then they say, "Oh, this thing is smelling," so government has to move it. The same not in my backyard. So every time we are looking for new land for this kind of waste disposal facilities, and it is going to be a problem for us if we don't have land available and also design, treat it, and keep our buffers. So it's something that we need to have in mind. I think currently there are some waste companies that are also doing some recycling, some composting.
Yeah.
So essentially the end use bits, something is being done. We need more because there are very few, and so we need to have more final disposal sites. So let me give you a bit of the chain. So at the household level is the generation point. Okay. So whether it's solid waste or liquid waste, the household is the generation point. When you generate, you contain or you store. And then when it is full, you empty. So for the toilet, you have a puller that will come in, remove it. A cesspit emptier will come and remove it. And then it will take it to a treatment plant for treatment. And after you've improved the quality, you can either reuse the solids or you can dispose of the liquid or use the liquid for agriculture. So that is a whole chain where you can recover nutrients or recover waste. The same for solid waste. You pick it, it has to go to a treatment facility to be treated before you dispose of what you cannot treat. So I think the chain has to work. So often we leave it at is the human behavior. The human behavior is only at the point of generation. When I finish generating and do what is right, what will happen beyond the chain? So I feel that is a space that we need to consider how to improve. I mean, there are things that are being done. Right. There's a policy that government has. There are structures, but more could be done to make sure that we get it right. So whilst we say behavior, let's look at the other bits, the engineering bits to buttress the behavior.
But I think that your engineering solution is, thinking about is very profound. I remember when I was in secondary school, I noticed that, there's just a particular track that comes for all our refuse.
Exactly.
Now, I later realized that there's an underground system, a sewage underground, which collects all the solid waste and even all the toilets in the school. After there's one system it goes into underground. Okay. It sieves it. Now, the water is sent to a particular field, which it waters the lawns, and it has a pond there for those
treatment,
Yes, treatment. It's treated down there. Yeah. And now the solid waste goes to, I got to know there was a school farm, which provides them with manure, provides them with all fertilizers. So it means that every single waste in the school is actually no waste.
Exactly. So that's why I told you are asking what the Europeans have done. But you see, I don't know where your school was, but it's something that we've been doing. We've been doing here.
It was very profound for me because, and I noticed, and it still runs, it still works. So I said, no matter the drought in school, there's water somewhere. Just that the treatment sometimes, but at least you can use it for
non-potable use.
Exactly, for scrapping and the rest. And the schools farm every time. They have manure. The farms, the animal, everything is just catered for.
Exactly.
Which I think that is something that if as a country, something we can also look into.
Yes. So essentially, it's like a whole off-grid system.
Yes.
But you make sure that what you are saying is you've done the whole cycle and you've recovered. So there are nutrients in the water. Is it nitrogen, phosphorus, those things we learned about. And the plants need it. You put it under your maize farm, it's going to be amazing. You put it under your tomato farm, it's going to be amazing. So essentially, we already have systems. That's why I said that we should make our systems work. If you go to university campuses, I had a few pictures of campuses, KNUST campus, Legon campus. You see, it's a very clean place.
Yes.
Very, very clean.
Yes.
Why? There's a system. People sweep the place every day. You have porters, people are sweeping the place. They are keeping it clean. People are cutting the lawn all the time. It's a system that is working.
It's true, because intentionally, if you enter University of Ghana, you stand at, the gate by the main street, when you look up to
Exactly.
you see that
A very beautiful,
exactly,
very beautiful place. So the question is, even when you go to these new estates, you see a whole new life. So we are in the same country, but we are in different worlds. So that's why I'm saying that the solution is not far. I mean, there are people may give examples of Rwanda. When I was in KNUST, people came from Rwanda to come and learn sanitation, and they are managing things in their country. So yes, we know the solutions, and maybe some way, somehow, we need to get the systems to work the way it should work.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a question by Comfort. Now, Comfort says that sanitation in certain parts of Ghana is in the worst form. What kind of advice do you give our leaders to enable them formulate policies so we do away with certain communicable diseases? Doctor, so Comfort is trying to find out what advice do you have for our leaders in terms of their policy formulation, especially since sanitation in some part. I'm sure, those part we all know. What advice do you have for our leaders?
Mm-hmm. Well, I cannot advise, but I can offer our opinion that we've shared. I think it's about, as I said, the system. It's about developing the fundamental system that makes the thing work. In the US, there are days that I don't know if you hear about the federal thing. There's a problem with their budget approvals in parliament. Then maybe they'll say that the system cannot work.
Yeah.
When it's not working, you look at their national parks, you see how much rubbish is there. Look at their parks or their bus stops, you see how much rubbish is sitting there. You'll be surprised, is this, America, or is this UK?
Yeah.
Even in UK, people will litter. But there's a fine when you litter. Or somebody comes to pick it immediately after you litter. Somebody goes to dump So all I'm saying is that sanitation will not solve itself. There has to be a deliberate and concerted effort to solve that. For example, the president said he wants to see Accra as the cleanest city. For me, this is not something that should have been a big challenge. We should have defined what is a clean city. What do you see in a clean city? How do we get there? And then we all work together. I give you my last example from the Bible, because maybe we may not have too much time. But I think it's somewhere in Genesis. I'm not a good Bible scholar, but I remember generally where things are. But somewhere in Genesis, I think the people said that they want to build a tower. And God himself came and looked at what they were doing and said, hey, if the people come together and they say they will do this, there's nothing that they cannot do. So I feel that is where, as Ghanaians, we have to make a decision. It's not government going to solve your problem. It's a concerted effort along the chain. At the household level where you generate, what things will you do? You have to get your bin, you have to store it appropriately, you have to make sure that you give it to the right person to pick. You pay for your service, then the person who has to pick it, because you've paid, he has to come at the right times. He picks it, he has to send it to the right place. You don't even have enough land for land filling or for treatment. So what happens? So the chain has to work. The system has to work.
But doctor, with the chain you talk about, isn't it also an issue of money? Because sometimes somebody is thinking, in fact, am I going to give maybe 50 cedis every week to somebody just to come and pick my refuse? I'd rather I'll put it somewhere and keep that 50 cedis. How do you think that mindset, that's a mindset some people have? You
are right. Even me, I'll do that. I mean, the point is, okay, so the point is, look, there should be bands, you see, there should be bands of service. There's service that is house to house. If you want them to come to your house, you have to pay for that level of service. If you don't have that 50 cedis, you can collect your refuse and take it to the communal place. Maybe that place, when you dump, you pay 1 cedi per dump. It's so there's a different service levels. Even you'll be surprised. I think the Aboboyas even charge more than the big companies who come. And so, but still a lot of people in low income patronize Aboboya. So it's not really about what people feel they have to pay. Once they understand why they are paying, maybe they'll pay. Maybe in other places, what happens is that charge is part of a bigger, what do you call those things? The property rates. Yes. And so it is taken there. You don't see it's directly coming from you. But it is actually, in other places, they tie it to other services. So whether it's electricity or water, you pay a full utility, and the different utilities would get their funding. So it's just the model of it. But I feel that if people are really getting the service, they will pay for it. I feel Ghanaians like to pay for good things. If the service is not good, yes, you get people. But there are people who cannot afford, and let's also be honest about it. And that's where the cross subsidy comes in. In our laws or in the assemblies, they have categories. They have category A charge, category B charge, category C charge. And it depends on the income level of the area. So some of it is high if you're high income, but some of it is low for low income. So that discrepancy, or sorry, that's equity issues are taken care of. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Maybe just before we end, your last E on education.
Yeah.
Can you probably touch on it briefly, then we can end on that?
Yeah, so education is about awareness creation. For lack of knowledge, my people would perish. So essentially, the bit about education is making people understand why you need to do a certain action. So you know that if I go and poo-poo somewhere, diseases will come. They will, let me just come just very quickly. When COVID came, I've been working in the wash sector for a long time. We've been trying to encourage hand washing. Nobody's washing hands. When COVID came, look at how everybody was washing hands, sanitizer. Fear can change people. So the fear of something can change you.
It looks like the fear works very well. Because again, if I cast my mind back in the way superstitions used to work, I mean, you're afraid, so you just comply.
Exactly. So sometimes people need to understand what they are up against. If you're up against something difficult, you would change. But also, we need to create awareness about what are the things you can do. So awareness on positive behavior. Before, people will raise their hand before they eat. But you saw hand washing with soap and water where there was something pinkish on the food. So now you know that now it's better to add soap to it. So there are things we need to educate people on. And I believe that when people begin to understand, then we can expect a different behavior from them. So it's a whole chain, but sometimes you need to enforce enforce it well.
But from the perspective of the church, what do you think is the role of the church in all of this? What can the church do to help sanitation matters?
Yeah, the church can do a lot. I think the church shapes our mind a lot. A lot of us, our foundational thinking are from the church, if you grew up in a church, or from the mosque. And so faith leaders are very important. They can be part of the preachers. They can preach to people about what to do. But they could also lead campaigns and advocacy around the things to do. But also, we as churchgoers, we need to take our own individual action. I was going to say that we can organize cleanups, though I'm not a big fan of, waiting for 1 year or 2 years or a special occasion. I feel the cleaning should be done every day. But once in a while, the church could do something, just to put it at the top of people's mind that this is important for us to
conscientize them
exactly,
that this is something we should
exactly. And our markets, there's something just to end on our markets. I know somebody who doesn't like to shop at Agbogboleshi because look at how the market is. And then the food is, put on the floor and you buy. Our markets need to be cleaned. Market women, I know they pay tolls. And I know market women are prepared to pay, to even have good cleaning services. And so I feel beyond what we ourselves are doing, Assembly should also ensure that those who are taking care of the markets, they clean our markets for us. Well, that's where we buy our food and ensure that there's good sanitation in our markets. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sure. Maybe just in 30 seconds, can you just give your final words to our audience? Just your final words.
Well, I think we've said a lot. I believe that it is possible to have clean cities in Ghana if we all put our shoulders to the wheel, and let's all practice good hygiene and sanitation behavior, and let's pay for services, and governments and assemblies should also play their part to complement what the households are doing. And together, I believe we can achieve the clean cities that we want to see. But it is possible. Yes, so I'm borrowing somebody's.
We use this as a phrase.
As a phrase.
It is possible. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much for the insights you've shared with us. I think it's been an eye-opener.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things we are not thought of it in from the perspective you brought them. We are extremely grateful.
Thank you for having me. I hope it's been useful. Yes.
Very useful. I have learned. I've made a lot of notes here.
Yeah.
We'll have some discussions after,
Sure.
but thank you very much again for your time.
Welcome.
And to our viewers, all too soon, we've come to the end of today's edition on Let's Talk About. We've been joined by Dr. Bertha Date, who is a seasoned freelance sanitation engineering consultant. We have learned about sanitation, and we've also learned about how we can implement some of the sanitation measures which can come through the 3 E's Doctor tells us: the engineering, method, education, and enforcement. My name is Kweku Atakra Jumo, and I've been your host today. Please do well to join us both on Facebook and YouTube next week for another thoughtful discussion. Do also to share today's link to somebody who was unable to join us, so we can all learn together and we can all get to know about sanitation and know what to do to contribute to the bid in keeping Ghana clean. Thank you very much and have a very good night.